Luca Magnotta, suspect in the gruesome murder and dismemberment of John Lynn in Montreal. Is this the face of evil? If he proves to be guilty, how do we measure the horrors of humanity? An act of torture, mutilation, cannibalism, necrophilia? Where do these heinous acts rank in comparison to the rogues gallery of infamy? Monsters like Clifford Olson, Paul Bernardo. Our next guest has spent a lot of time studying all of this, creating a 22-part scale of evil, deeming Charles Manson to be a 16, Ted Bundy a 17, Jeffrey Dahmer 22. He's right at the top of the scale, right at the bottom of the food chain. Where would Luca Magnotta rank in terms of depravity? Joining us now from New York is Dr. Michael Stone, professor of clinical psychiatry at Columbia University. Dr. Stone, let's just start with this one. Why this scale? What got you interested in putting all of this on a scale of depravity?
Well, I got interested in it when I was serving as an expert witness in the Jeffrey McDonald case where he murdered his pregnant wife and two daughters. He was a Green Beret doctor in North Carolina, then killed his family. And I was serving as a expert witness in that case, and I wanted to explain to the jury where that particular crime fit in the grand spectrum of all different kinds of terrible crimes. And I began reading true crime stories, full-length biographies of famous killers, and I thought, well, it's sort of in the middle somewhere because he stabbed them quickly. They didn't suffer a very long time. They weren't tortured. But it was nevertheless a lot worse a crime than, for example, Jean Harris's crime of passion, where she shot the Scarsdale diet doctor Herman Tarnauer when she discovered that he was cheating on her. I put that down as a crime of passion, so that was on the low end of the scale. And at the other end of the scale, I put people that really go in for prolonged torture in a just most revolting and nauseating way, like Ian Brady in England, who with his sidekick Myra Hindley would lure these kids to a very isolated cottage in the moors, and he would strangle them, but record their screams on an audio tape and then use the audio tape later as a kind of a sexual turn-on. So I figured, wow, that's about the worst thing I heard of at that time. Subsequently, I've heard of cases even worse than that, and I think that Luca Magnotta is right up there at the top or practically over the top.
So you're putting Magnotta on the same scale as Dahmer, 22?
Yes, I think so for two reasons. We don't really know exactly how much the poor fellow Jun Lin was suffering before he was dead. But so that, in other words, maybe there wasn't a prolonged suffering and torture, but so that would tend to put him a little bit lower in the scale. But on the other hand, you also have to take into consideration the degree of shock to the public and the degree of suffering of the loved ones who were the brothers and fathers and uncles of that man, and what even how the public reacts to the tremendous horror that the public feels that someone could do something like that. So that figures in the scale as well, and the shocking nature of it, and the utter disregard for any human feelings that Magnotta showed really puts him up there at the very end, because he did, as far as we know, necrophilia, cannibalism, dismemberment, and then even sending as a kind of in-your-face horrible act pieces of the body to different Canadian authorities, as I understand it.
Even Jeffrey Dahmer didn't do that.
No, he didn't.
All right, Doctor, for the last couple of days, I've been telling viewers, listeners, friends, anybody I could get in touch with, that I was going to have you on, the primo expert on this, and ask you to get inside the head, if possible, of Luca Magnotta. So would you do that for us? Because I don't want you to make me look like a liar. Okay.
Well, I happened to watch something equivalent to a YouTube of him, which must have been made, some time before the murder. And he's being interviewed, it looks to me, by a guy that didn't have much clothes on, but you don't see too much of him. But there's Luca Magnotta looking in a very androgynous way, like a very beautiful male model. With a wig, he could have been a beautiful female model, but be that as it may, he was talking in this very casual, joking way about being a male escort and having sex 4, 5, 6 times a day. The other guy was asking him, well, do you get kind of worn out and tired at the end of the day? He says, yeah, the first ones are a lot of fun. The first sex acts are a lot of fun, but by the end of the day, and then he throws his head back, oh, you just get worn out. But with this big smile on his face, obviously very proud and happy and thrilled to be the center of attention. So as far as I'm concerned, he would be like the poster boy for narcissism. I don't think I've ever seen a video that more aptly and forcefully describes what narcissism is than that video of Luca Magnotta.
All right, not all narcissists do evil, but
That's
are
right.
all evil people narcissists at the base? I ask you, Dr. Stone.
I would say the vast majority. I think, of course, in wartime, it's a little different situation. The people who were involved in Al-Qaeda and who flew the planes into the World Trade Center, many of them were political radicals who were not even necessarily particularly psychologically sick in the ordinary ways of understanding mental illness. They were not mentally ill people. Some of them were paranoid, like the Atta, the leader of the group who studied engineering in Germany. But many of them were fellows who were capable of having close relationships, girlfriends, kids, and whatever. But they had this firm belief that they were, quotes, doing the right thing. So they were doing evil, as we would recognize it, in a wartime type situation, but they were not all hopelessly narcissistic. But if you're talking about murderers in peacetime, or people like Luc Magnotta or serial killers, etc., I would say narcissism is just about an inevitable aspect of their personality because they're totally self-centered and they're thinking only about themselves. They have no empathy or compassion for other people. They are out for number one.
Is there any way to stop this narcissism from turning into what it became with Luca Magnotta? Do you think there's any way that you can, as a psychiatrist, do some sort of retrospective and draw some sort of line and say, you know, if they had caught it over there, this young Chinese man would be alive today?
Well, I would say the chances are not very great. I think probably someone like Magnotta, don't forget, he's been down on record as having done very cruel things to animals, kittens and cats and so on. Probably he was a very callous and unemotional young fellow when he was an adolescent, lacking in empathy, lacking in compassion already at that part of his life. And I would think the experience in my field at his present state is that it's very, very difficult, next to impossible, to instill empathy and compassion in somebody who lacks it. So that even if we caught him, let's say, after the first time he was suffocating kittens or doing some horrible thing to animals, which, by the way, is often a prelude to doing violent things with human beings. So that if you have animal torture as a kid, you really want to watch those people very carefully. But it's very hard to do therapy on them in such a way that they begin to feel the compassion that you and I would for the suffering of another living creature, animal, or human. The chances of correcting that's very slim.
Now, I'm not asking you this to appeal to your vanity. This is just a clinical question. If you, a top psychiatrist, someone who really truly understands evil, someone who testifies in trials on some of the most important issues revolving around evil, if you had Magnotta on your couch 2 years ago, could you have stopped him?
I have a hunch I couldn't. I wouldn't even necessarily have the power, unless he did something or told me that he did something that was very wicked already, to have him involuntarily institutionalized or hospitalized, so that it's very hard to head trouble off at the pass, as they say, with somebody like that. And I don't think that my efforts to correct him or make him a more caring person would have been very successful.
Now, you talk about a lack of empathy, which is what narcissists exhibit, and in this case, in the extreme, absolutely no empathy. Is there an empathy deficit when you see thousands of people posting jokes on the net, feeling that what happened to this young Chinese man is funny, or for that matter, what happened to people during 9/11 or any other horrible event? Is that an empathy issue?
Not necessarily. I think that when we're confronted with horror, and especially of a very disgusting, nauseating kind that just makes you sick, there's a strong human tendency to make what I think has been long time called gallows humor. Certainly in the forensic hospital where I work, there will be times when we will indulge in that so-called gallows humor as a way of dealing with our own emotions so that we don't get drowned in the horror and become sad and depressed and almost unable to go on with our work. So I think that's a rather common reaction. I wouldn't want to say that all those people were heartless, bad people. I think many of them are struggling with what would be overpowering feelings of, wow, am I of the same species as that guy, or what is the world coming to? And so they deal with it by kind of making a joke out of it. I'm not saying it's a wonderful thing to do, but it is a common human reaction in trying to deal with something as overpowering as that.
Yeah, we've talked about gallows humor. It happens in hospitals. It happens in cockpits. It happens among police and fire paramedics, what have you. I just thought that the way some people were making fun of what happened here, I thought it was much different than what, say, surgeons or doctors or paramedics have to deal with.
Well, I think you're right. I think that, of course, you'd have to almost take it case by case. I think many of them are people with a flippant, glib attitude toward what happened, and were making a joke out of it, not even allowing themselves to have a halfway normal reaction to how horrible the situation was. And so the same way you see all these kind of one-liner comments in the internet. You know, when you have a story like this one, and at the bottom they have a space for comment, and you'll have 4,612 comments, and many of them are very disturbed, very contemptuous, I would say. They make a mockery of whatever it is that was happening. So I think those people are very shallow, but what the proportion is of these mocking kind of responses or humorous so-called responses, what the proportion is of people that are just shallow and contemptuous versus those that have the capacity to feel compassion for this poor suffering man that was killed, and who are capable of feeling horror at what Manyata did. I don't know the breakdown. I don't know the ratio. All I know is that you're right, that many of them were very themselves flippant and callous in a way that it does not speak well for them. So.
Dr. Michael Stone, I really appreciate access to someone with your mind and your experience on this very important issue. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.